Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's e-commerce workshop, where we're going to be talking all about chargebacks. We'll cover best practices, some expert tips and tools that can help you deal with them. We're coming to the end now of the holiday season sales. So we hope that it's been a successful sales season for all of you and that you've had a lot going on. Hopefully you're deep into fulfillment by now. And although selling a lot is great, it does sometimes come with some challenges. And obviously, at the end of a big sales season like this, refunds and chargebacks are a natural part of selling. So in today's workshop, we hope that we'll be able to give you guys some advice and help you get through it a little bit easier. So I'm Liat. I lead e-commerce marketing at Wix. I'll be your host today. And joining me, we have two amazing Wix experts from our payments team. So first of all, we'll start with Omer, who you might remember. He's joined us in some previous sessions. Omer, we're so glad to have you with us again today. So please go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Thanks, Liat. So I'm Omer. I'm heading the bidding and payments for Wix in the past 5 years. Super excited to be here in, I would say, the advanced session of our intro to payments and e-com industry.
Thank you. And we actually have somebody else from the payments team joining us. That is Elon. So Elon, it's your first time on one of our workshops. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, I'm Elon. I'm a product manager on the Wix Payments team. I'm working on chargeback and dispute tools, among other payments-related products, and I'm very glad to be here today.
Well, we are very glad to have you both. So let's see what we'll be covering today. First of all, we're going to talk about refunds versus chargebacks. They're not quite the same, and explain exactly what a chargeback is. Omer will be giving us some best practices for how to prevent chargebacks in the first place. And then we'll talk about if you got a chargeback, what happens next? How are you going to deal with that? And Elon will actually show you how to dispute chargebacks using our Wix Payments tool. And he'll also show you all of the required documents and evidence that you will need in order to do that. Without further ado, Omer, I will hand over to you.
Great. So our first chapter in this session would be refund versus chargeback. I believe that most of you are familiar with a refund. If you are a customer shopping, let's say in a physical store, let's say you bought a dress for your daughter, coming home, the dress doesn't fit, the size is wrong, you're going back to the store asking for a refund. As simple as that. But when we are to look at chargeback, this is different. So let's understand what a chargeback is actually means. So a chargeback is a demand made by an issuing bank for a merchant to return funds to their customers. This can happen when a customer claims they didn't make the purchase, or when the product or service were not delivered, or the service was not rendered. In some cases, it can be that the product that was delivered was not as expected. So there is a misalignment with the expectation. What is happening here is that instead of directly contacting the merchant asking for a refund, the customer opens a claim with his issuing bank. He's calling her bank, asking, hey, I want to file a chargeback. And what is happening now is that the charge is automatically and immediately removed from the merchant's balance without any warning, okay? And the actual amount is being held by the customer issuing bank until the claim is verified. So it's a completely different flow, and we'll dive into it in a sec. So in many cases, especially in online purchases, customer thinks it's easier to file a chargeback claim rather to contact the merchants directly to request a refund. Again, going back to my daughter dress example, instead of going to the store, he needs to find out, hey, how could I reach out that specific merchant? Do I need to send back the goods? It's much more cumbersome. It's much easier to call the bank and file a chargeback, and that's it. You will probably get your money back. So let's have a look side by side. What are the main differences? The bottom line is actually the same. The money is being deducted from the merchant account and is getting into the buyer's account when the buyer is successfully winning a chargeback. And we'll touch base that on later on. So when it comes to refund, the refund is initiated by the customer or by the merchant. Essentially, it is being processed by the merchant itself. No need for other parties to come in. In addition to that, the merchant is following his refund policy. There is a direct communication between the merchant and the customer, and there's no impact on the merchant's relationship with his bank or his payment provider. Just two parties switching money, and that's about it. When it comes to the chargeback, it's a completely different ballgame. It is initiated by the customer and imposed on the merchant. The demand is made by the customer issuing bank. And there's also third-party involvement like the card scheme or the card networks like Visa and MasterCard. The merchant's credit score is also impacted, and chargebacks can bring about restrictions and sometimes the loss of the merchant's account in worst case scenarios. So what are the best practices for refund? In this case, let's wear the customer hat. Something that is a very common practice in the US, money back guarantee, no question asked, as simple as that. And this is the way that your customers are looking to get. So first of all, we advise you to create a refund policy that is a customer-centric. Put them in the middle. They are the most important asset in your business. Proactively communicate any order issues to your customers, such as shipping delay. Don't wait for them to call you. Respond to a refund request quickly. You could offer compensation. You could offer a coupon or discount. Refund before the request turns into a chargeback. This is super important. If you are unable to fulfill an order, cancel it and issue a refund to your customers. And finally, also be looking for signs of fraud, and we will touch base that later. Now, when we are to look on the main reasons for chargebacks. So the main or the predominant reason for chargeback is fraud. 40% of the chargebacks are brought to the issuing bank claiming that is a fraudulent transaction. However, many cases, those claims are what we call friendly fraud. So what do we mean by that? For example, the customer changed their mind about the purchase, okay? Or maybe they are claiming that a family member or a friend made the purchase without letting them know. So they actually didn't approve the purchase. Or another reason for that would be they missed a deadline and now they are not entitled to get refund. So what would be the way to get their money back? File a chargeback. But not all customers are making friendly fraud. In many cases, they don't even recognize the purchase, okay? Each purchase appears in your credit card statement. There's what we call a descriptor, a billing descriptor, which is a short wording referring to the merchants in which you bought the goods or the service. If you are writing down something that will not be recognized by the customer, they will say, hey, I didn't do it. So they might file a chargeback. Another reason is where the customer is not satisfied. Let's say I was buying a rug for my living room. I was expecting to get something with size 2 meter over 2 meters, but I got a much smaller rug for some reason. So the description of the product doesn't matches the actual product I got. So I want my money back. Frustration, super, super important. Those customers are sometimes frustrated. They're not getting your response. They are calling you, but they're not getting any feedback. So out of rage, they will call the bank, please fill the chargeback form for me. I want to get my money back. And lastly, the lack of trust. They did the effort. They try to reach you out because they have some question about the product. They have a problem, but nobody is picking up the phone or answering their email. So again, as a last resort, they don't trust you, they will file a chargeback. And again, this is the easier path. As simple as filing a form or calling your bank, boom, there is a chargeback. In many cases, there's no need even to provide any evidence, at least at the first stages. The customer tend to get the feedback or the wording coming from the clients because this is the main important customer, and that's about it. So once the chargeback is filed, the bank starting to reviews, and this is where the process actually starting to roll out. So the odds are essentially against you. As I mentioned, bank often trust the customer word and don't bother to do much research, okay? They want to safeguard their customer interest. This is the most valuable asset, right? So the merchants often needs to fend for themselves. Unlike refunds, the process where the process remains just between you and the merchants and the customer, here we have more partners in this party, like the payment provider, like the banks, like the payment network, Visa or MasterCard. So it's a much more complicated process to begin with. So in a nutshell, it does create an unbalanced relationship between you and your customer bank. And again, it's not one-to-one, it's one-to-many. And unfortunately, you are the one that is fighting the entire system. But we still can be optimistic. We'll show you what will be the best practice to fight for chargeback. So don't lose hope. Why are chargebacks bad for your business? First of all, you do have unhappy customers, so they will probably not return to your business or recommend it. Your customer feels that they cannot approach or talk to you. You're not available. You invested a lot of hard work. You made your product. You spent time and money sending those products over. And at the end of the day, the sale is wasted because the money will be deducted from your account and you're getting an unhappy customer at the end. This, of course, affects your cash flow, right? Because again, you're losing money that you actually invested in. That could also bring you into a negative account balance. What does it mean? For example, you got your payout and now chargeback is happening. So your payment provider will ask you to pay for it because he won't pay it for you. Something important to mention is that multiple chargebacks can impact your card processing rate and your eligibility to accept cards overall. And there are cases, the worst case scenario, if you do have a lot of chargebacks and you are not able to lower down, the payment provider might shut you down. So yes, this is the worst case scenario, but you need to take it into consideration. This is very important to monitor. So how do they monitor the payment providers and the card scheme? They are calculating the chargeback ratio. What does it mean? Taking the number of chargebacks cases per month and divided by the number of transactions per month. The golden number here is a chargeback ratio of 1% for both Visa and MasterCard. That below that, you are in a good shape. But if you are to exceed it, you're entering what they call the excessive chargeback program. If you are to have a chargeback ratio more than 3 consecutive months, you will start getting fines. And by fines, I mean it starts by $5K per month, going up to 10K, 20K, etc. But still, this is the least of your problem, because at the end of the road, if you're not going to fix it, they will shut you down. So what would be the best way? Just to avoid or handle those chargebacks when they occur. And again, just to reiterate, it is always better to issue a refund than deal with the chargeback.
So I have some questions for Omer. So the first question is, if my business is based in the US, but my customer is based somewhere else, like the UK, and then they file a chargeback, which regulations would apply?
Okay, so how the regulation actually works. The most important regulations to follow are the card networks regulation. Visa, MasterCard, Amex has their own version, but I think the best thing about it that their regulation are across the board. So there's no difference whether you're located in France or in the US. However, there are cases, specific countries where they do have local merchant protection laws or customer protection laws. But in the case of arbitration, the law that's going to win is where the merchant is located. Let me give you an example. I'm located in Israel, and we have a law that I am entitled to return a product within 14 days, no question asked, and I will be subjected to pay 5% or 100 shekels, the least of them. But it is only applicable for merchants in Israel. So if I were to buy from somebody from Amazon US, it's not relevant. They don't care. They only follow the local rules. So from the merchant perspective, you need to follow your, location rules and not where the buyer is located.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's great advice for the merchant side. We have another question. Is there a way to prevent the card issuer from deducting that original charge without asking the merchant?
Unfortunately, no. It just happened on the spot. Again, the card issuer wants to protect their clients, which are the cardholders.
So is there insurance that merchants can take to protect them from chargeback claims?
Okay, so there are a kind of insurance or chargeback protection program out there. In fact, we are considering offering kind of protection within our offering, the Wix payment offering. But those protection programs are limited in a way that they will only protect you from fraud related chargeback, meaning somebody stole your card and use it instead of you. So why is that? Because they are providing the fraud prevention service, and if they missed it, they will recover it for you. But in cases where service not rendered, the expectation were not met, there's no insurance, because nobody, unless you're doing some physician malpractice insurance, which is super expensive, for example, you won't get insurance for those kind of cases.
Gotcha. So as a merchant, how do I ensure that the customer will return my product to me? And can I give a partial refund?
Okay, partial refund, yes, of course, that's for sure. How can you ensure? You need to incentivize the buyer. At the end of the day, it is goodwill. But let's assume that you're calling your customer. I'm sorry about the miscommunication, whatever. I would like to give you a coupon for the next purchase, but please return back my product. It will work much better than just wait. Okay, please send me my product. I don't think he's going to do it. Why would he?
Right. So the important thing there, I guess, is that communication with the customer, try and incentivize them and make sure that they want to keep coming back to the business.
Exactly.
So in that kind of spirit, the next question, is it possible to convince a customer to cancel a chargeback?
I think it is, okay, it is an option, okay, because in the same manner that the customer is calling his bank to file a chargeback, he can call again. Yeah, I spoke with the merchant, I got the money, and this action will be rolled back. But as you stated correctly, it's all about communication. Don't leave them by themselves. As I stated, they are frustrated, they are angry. So you need to reach out, convince them with the best will. Okay, I want to make you happy. What can I do to make you happy? And then they might be willing to cancel the chargeback.
Right, that's excellent advice. So somebody wants to know, how do you recommend salvaging customer relationship after a chargeback?
So again, it's all about communication, okay? Even if a customer filed a chargeback, it doesn't mean that it's not going to walk in your store again. So you need to incentivize it. You need to be super polite and super, I would say, attentive to his need to understand why did he file a chargeback? Was it because the wrong expectation, because of the delayed delivery? And based on the exact reason, compensate them. Okay, they will be happy. They actually entered your store because they find something they liked. So retain them and communicate them as soon as possible.
Right. So I think it's just really showing them that you care, try and give them good service, really the same as you would if somebody came into your brick and mortar store, right? You would try and solve the issue for them.
Exactly.
So what exactly is Wix Payments involvement in the chargeback process?
Super important question, but I would leave Elon to walk you through. We have specific tools, flows, guidance, so all of the above, but wait to the next chapters.
Okay, great. And then one last question for this section. Does Wix charge any additional fees for refunds or chargebacks?
Okay, at this point, we do not. Okay, however, it is a common practice for most of the payment providers to charge a chargeback fee starting by $15 and even $20 or $25. We're not doing it as we speak. We might consider that doing that in the future, because at the end of the day, the card issuing bank charges us because we are responsible for your activity and they charge us for that fine. So we're not kind of rolling it out to you, but we might do it in the future.
Thank you. So of course, if that were to happen, Wix would communicate this and users would know about this.
Yeah.
Great. So I think we can continue to the next one.
Great. Okay, so let's discuss the best practices for preventing a chargeback. This is actually the most efficient way of fighting them. So trying to avoid them as much as possible. First tip would be to meet the expectations. Okay, we are living in this two-dimension world, right? We cannot really touch, wear, see exactly how the product fits to our needs. So you need, as an online merchant, to provide as much details as possible for the customer to get a sense, okay, this is how it's going to look like. So we're talking about product description, units, ingredients, measurements, multiple high-resolution product images from different angles, okay, including labels and variants, instruction of use this product. If you're selling t-shirt, laundry instructions, right? So people will know, if I only need to send this t-shirt to dry cleaning, maybe I won't buy it, okay? If you're buying something that is have some, I would say, food ingredients or cosmetics, mention them. Should there be a risk for allergy? Again, imagine that you are in the physical store, touching, feeling, reading the labels of that product, and you need to create the same notion when it comes to the online medium. At the bottom, you see where you set it up. You go to the store product, and there's a section on the product info. Okay. Be transparent. Again, in the same way that you, as a customer, would like to get all the information, the good one and potentially the bad one, if let's say you have a delivery delay, do the same practice. So if you are aware, let's say holiday season, you know that there's going to be kind of a traffic jam with your carriers. Okay, let your customer know because of the holiday season, the delivery might be delayed within a couple of days, so they won't be surprised. Okay, imagine that there is a gap between clicking the buy now button and accepting or getting the product. You're so anxious to get it, you just bought it, you're super excited, but if you're expecting to get it within 2 days, but for some reason it takes much, much longer, you will be frustrated, angry. So why even go to that path? Just be transparent to begin with. Make your terms known. And by terms, we mean the general terms and conditions of your store, your refund policy, your shipping, fulfillment policy. And those terms should be available in the, I would say, the critical landscape of the checkout flow. It means the footer, the product page, and the checkout. Okay, so we're giving you all the tools to set it up in the right place and use it. You should not hide it because this transparency creates the trust. ETAs, again, especially when we're talking about shipping, delivery, if there might be a delay, communicate it. That's fine. Delays might happen, but as long as you are communicating to the customer, giving them the ability to track the orders. So for some reason, I don't know, there was a blizzard in Manhattan and the trucks couldn't leave it. Things might go wrong, but as long as you have the visibility to what is happening with your order, you will feel secured. Somebody is really taking care of my goods. And by communication, you could send email, you can send messages. If your customer is a member of your community, so there are many ways at Wix you could use, just use them. Be accessible. Going back to the physical store example, again, the dress doesn't fit my daughter needs. Okay, I went back to the store, got my money back. Now in the online world, instead of going to the store, I need to call somebody or to send an email. So you need to state in a very loud and clear manner how to contact you. Use different channels, email, phone, Facebook, Instagram, everything that can help your customer to reach you out, okay? Because they might have issues with the product, might have issues with the instruction, they don't know how to use it. So use different channels and they will really appreciate it. Make sure your contact info is accessible and up to date. If for some reason you change your Instagram account or change your phone, update in your website, that's fine. But just make it, I would say, a live asset, not something that you put in the beginning and just forget about it. Being responsive. As opposed, again, to the physical store, the store is open 9 to 7, 6 days a week. But the downside is you cannot buy outside of those hours. The online world gives you the ability to sell online 24/7, and your customers expect you to be available. So we're not talking about 24/7, but still be monitor all the cases you are getting, reply them as soon as possible so your customer feels that there's somebody that is getting their feedback or getting their request. Stay recognizable. There is what we call the billing statement. What is the billing statement? When you are to look at your credit card statement, there's a list of lines. Each line has what is the amount that was charged, what was the date, and a short what we call descriptor that represent where did I buy or to whom did I pay that amount. So this descriptor is super important because when your customer will be looking at their statement, they will look at, am I familiar with who's Omer.com? I don't remember that I bought something from Omer.com, so maybe somebody stole my card. I will file a chargeback. But if my business is well known, but not as Omer.com, but Omer's Chef for You, okay, I remember, yes, I bought some catering stuff from Omer. So that will be super important for the customer to recognize, to ring a bell. You can use your URL, your business, or doing business as whatever is actually, I would say, the wording that would ring a bell in the fast manner to your customer. This is something that all payment providers support. At Wix Payment, you need to go to manage your payments, customer statement descriptor, and then you set it up. Okay, this is super important because in many cases, because your customers do not recognize who is this merchant, they would just, instead of Googling, they would just call their bank and file a chargeback. Be proactive. Again, communication, but in a timely manner. If you have a delay, call them before. Make sure that if they do send you an email, there is an automatically acknowledgement that the email was received. As soon as you have an update, let them know. Okay, so they will wait for your feedback and you should be responsive as much as possible. Also, when we are talking about communication means, again, it is not just phone calls or emails, but also social media channels. They are super important and super popular nowadays, so follow up on them as well. And finally, watch out for fraud. At Wix, we do have an anti-fraud solution where we screen each and every transaction. However, there might be cases where the fraud engine will miss that specific, I would say, potential fraud activity. And this is where we ask you to also be alerted. How would you recognize that it might be fraud? For example, a fraudster is buying large quantity of the same product, often big tickets. Let's say you are selling watches that each watches cost $1,000. If somebody is purchasing in a bulk, well, they might be fraudsters. If a fraudster may make multiple purchases with different cards, again, ship them into the same address. It is unlikely that a single customer would use multiple cards on multiple purchases. Again, this is a sign for fraud. So what would you do when you do think that it might be fraud? First thing could be call your customers. Hey, I just got an order of $10K. Did you make this order? Maybe there is a valid reason for them to buy a bulk of shoes or watches. That's fine. They're buying for their entire family. But if not, this will be the first sign, okay, that might be fraud. So what would you do? Just refund the card and then you're done. We're just kind of erasing any potential of fraudulent activity and no chargeback can be filed.
Thank you, Omer. So we do have a couple of questions that we've collected for you on this section. So we want to go back to what you were talking about with unrecognized billing, and that being a driver for chargebacks. So people want to know what you would recommend to put as the statement descriptor. For example, should it be the DBA, the registered company name, something else? Like, do you have a best practice?
Again, it varies between merchant to merchant. Think in a way that you are running a marketing campaign to your business. What would you put in the headlines? Would that be go shop at www.omer.com, or go shop at Omer's Chef for You, or go shop for, I don't know, whatever is your keyword that you would also use in the SEO engine that we provide, use the same thing. So it will ring a bell immediately for your customers. Hey, I know where I bought it. Okay, so it should be short because there is a limitation for the billing descriptor, but still something very memorable.
Gotcha. So focus on that recognition and not necessarily official term.
Exactly.
So somebody wants to know with regard to refunds, is it possible to have a no refund policy?
Yeah. Let's take, for example, you are doing personal portrait. You're actually painting a portrait. This is one-off. So even if your customer feels that, it doesn't look like myself, sorry, you did the work, you spend hours. So I would advise you to state it loud and clear. When you are entering this journey, at the end of the day, you get this portrait, but there's a fee for having your own portrait. You cannot get a refund. I'm spending the work. This is how it goes. And it's also applicable for any tailor-made product. But you need to state it again, no refund, which is fine. The customer needs to be aware of that when before they click the Buy Me button.
Gotcha. So the most important part really is just be super clear in whatever your policy is and make sure that customers understand what they're getting into.
Correct.
So where do I get the right policies for my website?
Okay.
Like,
it's a very good question. So there are services, online services out there that are selling kind of, I would say, ready-made templates for you to do kind of a search and replace and put your merchant name within the policy. But you need to find the one that fits your product or the type of services that you're selling. Another option would be to approach some legal consulting offices, stuff like that. They know this is what they know, this is what they are got their expertise, and they can create a tailor-made solution for you. But I would advise you to start, again, if you are not selling something super complicated, there are plenty of generic templates out there. Just find the one that you are, I would say, connected to, because the legal language might be sometimes too overwhelming, and you need to feel, I would say, we need to feel the ownership. Yes, this is my policy. It's not cut and paste from, I don't know, whoever's site.
Right. So just make sure that you're fully customizing it to reflect your business, your terms, all of that.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit about fraudulent activity and how sometimes chargebacks come from fraudsters. Could you explain a little bit more how Wix prevents fraudulent activity? Sure.
So we have a combination of internal and external tools. Some checks that we're doing are comparing the billing data, okay, with the cardholders' data. So if the cardholders is coming, let's say, from Indonesia, okay, but his billing details are in the US, we might think that there is a misalignment and we need to check it out. We are checking the device because we do have a list of devices that are, by device I mean laptop or phone, that are owned by fraudsters. There are some database out there that we could cross-check. There are some external tools that you're using that actually sits on a huge network of fraudulent activity out there. And usually those fraudsters do not just go to one site, they go to many sites. Sometimes they're using stolen card. And again, this stolen card might be used in somewhere else. So we are combining all those, I would say, data points, creating what we call fraud score. And if we think that is a most likely fraudulent activity, we will decline the transaction to begin with.
Gotcha. Okay. So thank you very much, Omer. We appreciate all of your great advice, and we hope to bring you back again soon to talk more with our users. Elon, we're going to hand over to you to talk to us about what to do with chargebacks.
Thank you, Liat, and thank you, Omer. It was very enlightening, and I actually learned a few things myself. So we are going to cover over the next slides the flow of chargebacks on Wix platform and how to dispute them. But as a disclaimer, before I got into Wix, I was a merchant myself, and I'm well aware of the experience of getting chargebacks from customers. And although chargebacks are one of the costs of doing business, it's terribly frustrating, and many times we take it personally. So I want you to remember that filing a dispute is our way of recovering your money by proving that the payment was legitimate. It is important to say that in the first times, it is not always easy, but in time, you will learn how to do it better and better. And here, we will learn to do exactly that. So let's begin. When receiving a chargeback, you have 4 options. Let's walk through them. You can accept the chargeback if you think that the customer claim was legit and the funds will remain with the customer. You can contact the customer and try to get to an agreement, as Omer mentioned before, which I personally believe is very important for many reasons, which I will elaborate more farther down the road. But regardless, contact your customer regardless the outcome. If you do manage to get to an agreement, then in most cases, you have to understand that it will end up with you refunding the payments, which is way, way over preferable than a chargeback. As Omer mentioned, there are a bunch of reasons why, and that's totally okay. The third option is to dispute, which we are going to cover more in depth over the next slides. And last, we don't recommend that, but you can do nothing. And after 18 to 40 days, the chargeback will expire and you won't be able to dispute it. If you decided to dispute, you will have 18 to 40 days to do that. Depends on the card scheme rules. Again, card schemes such as Visa and MasterCard. And once you disputed, the issuing bank, and in some cases some other parties, such as their card schemes, will review your evidence. It will take between 40 to 90 days, depends on the card scheme rules, until you get the final resolution, won or lost. And if you win, the money will be returned to your account.
So if I win the chargeback, how long will it take for those funds to actually be back in my account?
Good question. So if the dispute's final resolution ends in your favor, in the vast majority of the cases, it will happen immediately. So in some cases, it may take several days, but no longer than 7 business days. And again, in the vast majority, it will happen immediately.
Great. So what can a merchant do if they don't agree with the decision of the chargeback dispute? Can they appeal it or file another dispute?
In short, appealing a final dispute resolution in theory is possible. It's called arbitration, and it's being done on the card scheme level. Unfortunately, we do not support it, and this is not possible in Wix Payments, and also in most of the other platforms I'm familiar with. And there is a very, very good reason for that. Arbitration would rarely go well for you as a merchant. Moreover, the consequences if you lose are quite big. So it may result in different penalties. And there are also high fines around $500 or so if you lose on top of what you've already lost. So, yeah.
So you're saying it's not recommended to go that route anyway.
Exactly.
So let's say my Wix Payments account balance doesn't have enough funds to cover the chargeback. What do I do?
It's not ideal, but it may happen. Your account will go into negative balance, and we would ask you to top up your account.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're good on this one. You can continue to the next section.
So how to dispute chargebacks with Wix Payments? Basically, we have a built-in tool. We offer a built-in chargeback dispute tool to help our merchants manage and dispute their chargebacks without leaving their dashboard. Notifications. The tool notifies the merchants when they get a chargeback claim and when the chargeback status changes. Guide. It provides a walkthrough of what needs to be done when a claim is received, including how to dispute it. Recommendations. The tool includes info on the chargeback reason and recommends which evidence to upload in order to try and win the chargeback claim. And timeframes. It also shows deadline for submitting dispute before it expires. Now let's see how it looks on Wix. So Wix will notify you on each chargeback in 3 different ways. The first one is in the payments table. Second one is email and text message. From the payments table or from the email, you can click on a payment with the status chargeback open, and you will get to the payments details page with all the important information about the chargeback, such as what's the chargeback reason is and what is the due date to submit an evidence for a dispute. You can accept the chargeback by clicking accept chargeback. That essentially means that you agree with the customer's claim. And if you confirm, the funds will remain with the customer. If you choose to dispute, you can click on dispute chargeback, and then you'll get to the dispute tool page. First, choose the type of product or service. And it's important to say that choose the right product type is basically important because for different types and different chargeback reason, you'll get different instructions to follow. For example, in case of reason fraud with service product type, you will need to prove that so as you can see here, you will need to prove that you provided the service and that the customer used and paid for the service before with no issues. Yeah. And again, the instructions are based on the chargeback reason as well. Take a look at the instruction for the chargeback reason fraud. Take a look now. It has been changed according to the new chargeback reason. Next, you will need to upload the evidence, including all the required documents and files that were stated for you in the instructions. And of course, you can come up with more of your own if you have any other evidence than we recommended before. Keep in mind that your dispute files are usually printed and photocopied. Make sure all the files you upload are of good quality. This is very important. And then you have the text evidence, or the official name is rebuttal letter, is where you should describe the details of the case and explain why the evidence you've uploaded supporting the fact that the payment was indeed legit and you deserve to get your money back. When clicking submit, you will need to confirm, and here it's important to note that you won't be able to make any changes after you submitted the dispute file. Once you dispute it, the status of the payment will be changed to chargeback in dispute. We will send you an email when there is a final resolution, and you can also review the chargeback status at any time here from the payments table. And this is how dispute process looks like on Wix platform.
Great, thank you. So I do have a couple of questions for you, Elon, regarding this section. So first of all, could you maybe give some examples of different instructions or evidence for different chargeback reasons, and why are they different for different chargeback reasons?
Yeah, so as shown before, we do provide recommendations within the dispute page based on the chargeback reason and the type of service. The chargeback reason indicates the cause of the chargebacks that was provided by the buyer. And it is important to consider that while disputing the chargeback. For example, if the chargeback reason is fraud, it means that the customer denies that he or she committed the transaction. So what you should do is basically prove that the buyer did make the transaction, familiar with the transaction, and receive the product or service. We are going to talk about evidence over the next slides, but for example, screenshots of communication with the buyer over email or text messages can definitely point to that. This is why I said before, it is very important to communicate the customer, because even if you don't get, even if you won't get to an agreement, then at least you will have one of the best evidence you can use in your dispute case. One last thing, the type of product or service will determine which evidence you should use. For example, if you are selling physical goods, then you can use shipping confirmation as evidence. But of course, be creative and use whatever may help you to prove your case, because there are many types of businesses in Wix and we cannot cover all of them. So we give just a gist of the best practices in the market.
So what about chargebacks for merchants who sell digital goods? How can they prevent customers from claiming that they did not receive these goods?
So again, each chargeback is unique. There is no one action item I can recommend on. The idea is to prove that the product has been received and has been used. For digital goods, you can do it by proof that the customer bought this item before with no issues, or screenshots of communication with the customer about their usage. This one is valid for most of the cases.
Great, thank you. So I think we can continue.
In general, you're hoping to show proof that the customer agreed to the to the terms of sale, knew what he or she was doing in making the purchase, and authorized that transaction. I'm going to show you some of the best practices that works in most cases, but remember, every chargeback is unique, so be creative and think out of the box on how to prove your claim. Proof of delivery, it could be many things, depends on the type of product or service. If it's physical good, then shipping confirmation, ideally signed by the customer, is one of the strongest proofs you can use. But in general, any proof that you can provide, which indicates that the customer received the product or service, will be quite good evidence. Invoices and receipts, use documents that show you are familiar with the income. Even better, if you prove that you've sent it over to your customer via email or in any other way. Customer communications, this is one of my favorites if you didn't understand it so far, because it suits almost every chargeback case. Text messages, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, emails, or any other way of communication that proves a link between the person receiving the merchandise or service and the cardholder. Or even better, that prove that the cardholder is in possession of that merchandise or using your service.
We are really right at the end of the session. So thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And Omer and Elon, just very quickly, before we head out, would you like to leave our audience with your final words?
I think this is super exciting to see how many merchants are taking the deep dive into this payment space, becoming, kind of a grown-up merchant dealing with a not, I would say, very nice aspect of running a business. But as Elon stated before, this is super important. You just need to deal with less, I would say, lovely situation like chargeback.
My takeaway is that disputing chargeback is a skill you don't want to be an expert at. So do everything you can to prevent them from happening ahead of time.
So thank you both so much. I know this is really important information for our merchants, especially now as they're drawing to a close of this year's holiday season. So we wish you all the best of luck with your remaining holiday season sales. We hope that you do not get any chargebacks, but if you do, please come back to the session and watch it again. Thank you very much, everybody, and see you at the next workshop.